Hey, it's Yazuki Wolf, and welcome to another episode of the Manga Workshop series. So first off, I'd just like to apologize for taking a few weeks off before I was able to get the next iteration of this series going. I've been fairly busy at work working on my new game, which we just released in America and abroad on the 31st of last month, so in July 31st. It's a game called Rinka. I'll go ahead and leave a link to it down below. It's the very first game that I've released outside of Japan, so I'm pretty excited about it. It's a lot smaller than the last game I made, so it's not like a huge turn-based strategy game. It's just a simple mini game where you play a will-o-wisp, will-of-the-wisp, spirit that's kind of meandering through a dark pathway. And anytime you run into a shadowy object, you die. So it's a one life, and then you die game. Every time it restarts at the beginning, and it has that, and the stages are just endless, and you're trying to get a high score. So it's a very much simpler game than the last game I made. It's kind of like a good way to visualize it is to take Flappy Bird meets Limbo, or with a little bit of Badlands flavor in there, you know. So it's a kind of like minimalistic design with with a very simplistic gameplay, one touch controls, but it's still made to be very difficult and challenging. So anyways, I don't want to go too much onto that because that's not what this particular video is about, but I just want to let you guys know that what I've been doing and why I haven't been as on par with getting these episodes out every other week. But okay, so today, what we're going to go into is the use of screen tone. Yeah. So, does everyone know what screen tone is? Screen tone is this kind of like clear. It's a clear sheet that you purchase, and it's clear with with only black. I was gonna say dots. Usually it's dots, but it could be other things as well. It's a clear cell sheet basically that you would put over your manga in order to give it sort of a shading or other type of background effects, or even like coloring the characters' clothing and stuff. So even like right now, you can see in this particular cover. This is an old manga I did back when I was in school. To be honest, it's just up front to let you guys know, I really hate using this stuff. That's why I use it as little as possible. But it is still a very useful thing to know about, so I'm gonna teach you about it anyways. But just up front, so you know that this is not something that I was really big on using. So you can see this is my old manga, and there I used screen tone on his clothing, so that's how you get this kind of like gray color to the clothing. I believe I've mentioned it before, but you're not allowed to color things gray in manga, at least not if you're not for something that you're going to be bringing to a magazine in Japan. They only print black and white. So the way that you get gray is you take one of these screen tones, which just has tons of little black dots, which are put so close to each other that it gives you the optical illusion of being gray, or different shades of gray, and so forth. So like for example, I want to see if I can remember how I used to do this. This is one sheet here. Here's another sheet. I can't see anymore. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. So CB. Yeah, so you kind of, when you purchase it, you kind of look here. It has like it says 50L, 10%. I'm not completely. I forgot. I kind of forgot exactly what all this meant, but you could kind of look at the numbers here, and it will tell you like how close together the dots are or how far apart they are, and that's sort of a way that I would find like, oh, I really like the consistency of this particular screen tone. It gives me the kind of shade that I like, so I would always make sure to buy the Y1053, and then I think I would have like a lighter one like the CB310. For more information on that, I suppose you could probably look online, probably go to Maxon's website or something. I'm sure they'll have more information, but I don't want to go too much into that. But just so you know, there is these different gradations of how far the dots are separated from each other, or how thick they are to give different kind of tones. And then you have other kind of like more noisier screen tones like this one. I'm not sure how well this shows up on the camera, but this is not as, so the last one I showed you is it's very, what's the word? All the dots are very specifically placed, so it has a very, so it gives that very much gray effect to it. While this one, the dots are more sporadically placed, and they aren't always dots, they have like little squiggly lines and things, so this gives you like a noisy effect. So you get like a different kind of texture to it. And so you go to this place, go to the shop, and you buy as much of these that you think you might use. There's also more like specific things, like this is a gradation. So these are small gradations that you might use in backgrounds, just kind of give an effect of like some kind of like shading in the background. Then you have like larger gradations, like, so this, I mean, I've already used most of this up, but you can kind of see here how it has this gradation going from here to here, where it goes, it fades away to nothing. So it's like you can use these as well to just get kind of gradations. Another thing, you could do the gradation yourself, and I might go into that later, where you kind of cut away at a regular tone to make your own gradations, and that may be useful to have. But you can also just buy the gradations outright like this. If you go to the store, you may also see where like you have like complete backgrounds that are basically made of tones. I kind of don't recommend those. I had a friend who, when I was in school, he used that a couple times, and he actually ended up turning off of it because it was just too stark of a difference between like his drawing and then having this almost like photorealistic background. It was like, it just looked kind of weird. So I don't know if I would necessarily recommend those, but so you know that they do have those available as well. I usually, when I went to the store, I would just get a couple different shades, like a couple different like matte shades of kind of like a really dark gray and like a mid gray and like a lighter gray, like I showed you earlier. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, so here's more of the lighter one, and I would just use those to have different levels of shading. And then I think I got some gradation ones, but after I got used to it, I stopped getting. I didn't get as many gradations. But anyways, yeah, so getting to the thick of things. So you see here he has his clothes is one color, and then for his for the shading in his face and for the shading in the metals, I use the lighter tone, and this whole background is empty. So really, probably should have put more tone into the background. This is very kind of white and sparse, but I think I was going for kind of like a Shido coat, like a black and white type of feel for this manga, so I wasn't too concerned with that. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go back and see if there's anything that we can kind of add to this to kind of give it that, to kind of show you how to add tone to a manga. So let's see here. I don't think I want to mess with the cover too much right now. I think that would take that's too big of a project to kind of make that work out. So for now, let's go to the first page. And you see here that we have a nice little background here, which I was kind of working on having big beta nudies to kind of just give a strong contrast between the darks and lights. So like I said, I wasn't trying to get too much of the mid-tones. I was going for a very black and white, strong blacks and strong white type of feel. But yeah, there are some parts that are a little sparse, like this character here, like you can see like all his clothing is just white, and then his face is white, so he kind of looks like he's how you say, like a ghost or something, and that's probably not the effect we were looking for. So let's see if we can add a tone to one of his clothing elements. Let's see here. I think we'll go for probably the lighter tone. I don't think I want to make it too dark for him. But let's say we want to give some, maybe his vest is a different color than well, let's go maybe the inside. What do you think? The inside or the outside? There's enough texture on the inside, so let's make the outside of his vest a different shade. So what you do is you take your tone that you bought, so you place it over him, and just try to cut out an area that will cover the whole space that you want to fill. So like I want to fill this whole space, so I'm going to see if maybe, yeah, I think I actually might be able to use this. See, I try to reuse as many parts as possible because tone can be a little expensive if you buy a lot. So here we go. I'm going to take this part out. There we go. And we're just going to put that on top of him, covering up the whole area that we want to have that color, or that shade, I guess is what, tone, I guess is what I should say. We're missing a little on the bottom. Let's kind of fix that again. So you're like, get this to line up right. There we go. That should do it. Alright, and we're done. There we go. Okay, of course, yeah, we're not done yet. So you just make sure that you kind of place it down lightly. Don't press too hard. And now the next step is to cut away the parts that you didn't want. So, let me see where I can put this. Put this guy over here. Now we're going to go in here and you're going to take, just, there's nothing real special about this. I mean, some people, they use like really, maybe buy like really specific X-Acto knives, and you know, if you want, I think it could be a good investment. Like I said, I didn't use tone that often, so for me, just like 100 yen or $1 X-Acto knife from the store was more than enough. I mean, you could get the actual like artistic ones where you have like the thing on that you screw on top, and like the one specific what you call razor blade and things. Like there's a lot of different like better quality things you can use, but for me, I never really found that I needed much more than this. So there it is, just as simple. Go to the dollar store, 100 yen shop, get that. So go here and we're just gonna cut out the parts that we don't want. So go around here, and the key is moving. You don't push down so hard that you're going to cut the paper, obviously. Just push down enough so you can feel the plastic, the film of the screen tone cutting, but you don't cut much deeper than that. And then the key is, see here how we're making a turn? It's easier, instead of trying to move your hand around, to just move the paper and keep your hand still. And then you can cut across there and go back this way. And then now we can go back down this way, and you can see how I'm moving the paper around, and not so much the my hand. I'm gonna go around and the belt part of it too. I might decide to cut that out later, but first let's just see how it would look if we have the belt a different shade as well. And there are probably better tools you can use as opposed to poking it with your X-Acto knife. You could get like a specific like little plastic piece. Actually, if I get it a second, I'm going to take a break and see if I actually might find if I have any of those plastic pieces. But I never really used it because I just, you know, it goes back to my kind of like haphazard philosophy of where if I could do it with one tool, I'm just going to do it with one tool. I don't like having tons of things to worry about. And so this is a pretty useless, but if it was a more sizable piece, I would usually just stick it back on here so that I could use it at a different part of the manga. And you know, yeah, let's just go ahead and stick it here. Maybe you'll find something that we can use it for, just to kind of save money by reusing parts as opposed to throwing it away right off the bat. Okay, I was gonna try to show you like a plastic palette knife. It's that that people often use to kind of push it down, but to finalize that, it's pushed down onto the paper. But it looks like I no longer have the one that they gave me because, like I said before, I found that if I could live without something, I generally just didn't use it. So I'll show you. If you want to go to if you go to the store and ask them, I'm sure you could find a sort of like palette knife, like plastic thing that you kind of push across to push it down. But I always found that it was pretty easy just to kind of put a piece of paper over it and then just kind of push down. Now you can even kind of rub with this or something. And that usually did the trick for me to kind of just get it pasted on there. There you go. So now that shouldn't come off anymore. Alright, so that's the basics. We got him in there. And as you can see, I don't know how well you can see, but some of our tone went onto these little like rings that are in his belt. So you could go in afterwards and you could scratch those out. This may be a little tough to describe, and I think I'll probably go into it more later, but just for now so you can kind of see. You take the side of your razor blade and just scrape across the tone, and you could actually get rid of the dots. You're basically shaving them off, and this allows you to kind of like erase areas that you don't want. And the other thing you can do is you can do it for highlighting. Like, let's say I want to have like a highlight, like his belt, maybe the top part of his belt I want to have like highlighted white. So you go across here. And shave into that, and I kind of leave like a white line there. And this is actually how you do a lot of different effects with tone, which I think I'm gonna actually kind of cut this off to make that a different video, but just so you know what's coming up, stuff like this, you know, these clouds. You can actually buy tone that actually already has clouds on it, but this is not that. This was basic tone, just like what we put there, and then you take your razor cutter and you just kind of shave into it. Let's see if I can find a place where I could, like maybe over here. You're just gonna go in here and cut away. And I'll do a separate video on that because I think that's a kind of a video of itself of how to do these type of tone effects. But see here, you'd also kind of cut into it here and make a gradation where you're just kind of cross-hatching with your razor blade. It's basically the exact same thing as what we were doing before with exercises with the ink, but now you're doing it on a screen tone and you're doing it with a razor blade cutting into it. So you're the opposite of, instead of making dark marks, you're making light. You're making light marks by cutting away the darkness, basically. And here you have this kind of like part of shading here. This is the same thing where it's kind of cross-hatched down here. And then cross-hatched back the other way. Don't know how well you can see this, but every time I do this, I'm kind of scratching into it. Video. Let's go ahead and take a look in here and see what else we can do. So we added his tone. I think we definitely want to add it here as well. And maybe down here, you can see that we have this kind of spark white background. So you know what we're gonna do? The last thing I showed you with the gradation, we're going to do that now. We're going to do that with this background here. So let's see, what tone will be good for this? We could use, this is a little too dark for this scene, I think. I feel like the kind of grittiness of this might be kind of good. But I'm going to stick with the same tone we used up here and just put it for the background here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a gradation for his background there. But first there's a couple points about shaving these that I want to kind of go over you with. And so you can see it on the camera, I'm going to use this darker shade here. So let me just go ahead and take a little bit of this off, and we're going to put it over here on this paper here. Let's see, put it. Now, this is me showing you what you need to avoid doing. So let's see if we can zoom in a little bit on this. Okay, so not sure how visible this is going to be. Yeah, you can see that red, I think. Okay, so if you look very closely, the lines kind of, the dots line up in sort of straight angles. And so this is when you purchase it, when you purchase your screen tone, all the dots will be kind of lined up directly horizontal, directly vertical, and I'm sorry, horizontal, vertical, and vertical, and also diagonally. So what that translates to mean is that when you are cutting into the dots, you want to avoid these angles. You don't want to cut directly vertically, directly horizontally, or in a direct 45-degree angle. You want to actually cut into the, so basically what that means is when you do a stroke cutting into the tone, cutting this way is fine, cutting into here is fine, cutting into here is fine, and into any of these pies inside of here, all that area is fine, but you want to avoid the red area. So cutting in these angles will create artifacts of, because you're cutting actually along the way that the dots are lined up. And so it will create artifacts where it doesn't look quite as clean as it would if you avoid those. So in general, when you're making these patterns, you don't want to cut in straight 45-degree angles. You want to cut in between. So really, in between these reds, you cut like in these lines. And not sure how well this is picking up on camera once again, but you may be able to tell that these lines are a lot smoother and cleaner than these direct lines. So that's just your general advice when you're making these kind of patterns. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that you don't just have to use a razor blade. Another thing that is used, especially for like clouds effects and things to some extent, is your ink sand eraser. So I think I've showed this before to be able to erase some smudge marks with your ink. It's also very useful for erasing the dots from your tone. So let's see if we could kind of make some marks here. See how it kind of cuts into it, sands into that. And we can kind of use that to make. You could kind of imagine how you could use that to make some sort of an effect. I'm just kind of winging it right now, just kind of show you what you can do. I'm not actually trying to make anything right now, but I'm sure you can kind of imagine how that could turn into a cloud. You know, it's very simple. You just get your kind of like misty cloud-like effects with the sand eraser, and then you go in afterwards and you finalize the right word, but you can kind of make those specific details to kind of get the outline of clouds here. But clouds is going to be another episode. But yeah, so you kind of see the idea of what I meant there. But that was the scrap piece, so we're going to throw that out. Alright, now getting back to the real thing. So, once again, we're going to cut out the area that we want. Let's see, I think Let's take it from this side actually. There we go. And I'm gonna go maybe halfway down. So I'm not gonna make the whole square with that, but about halfway down. And then we'll cut up here. And I think I'll stick this side on the bottom so that I have a little room to work with. Alright, there you go. And now we're going to make a gradation. So this, not in a 45-degree angle, but a little bit more than a little bit outside of 45-degree angle. We're just going to make some cuts along here. I'm actually going to cut into it, so I'm going to turn it upside down. And actually this may go actually a little bit smoother if we get a new blade first, so let's go for that. Be careful when you replace these that you don't break it into your eye or anything. Does it go the other way? I haven't done this for a long while. Alright, there you go. So now we got a new fresh blade, so it should cut right into it like butter. Let's give it a shot. So I think everyone can kind of just figure out their own way of how they like doing this. So this isn't necessarily anything I learned in a book or at school, but what I'm doing is I'm just sticking with the same direction for right now, and I'm making about 3 different layers to it. Like a very soft layer that goes way up to here, and then like a kind of medium layer that went to about right here, and then I have like a more strongly scratched layer that's right at the edge to kind of hope that the edge will be able to turn into white. Alright, now we're going to go the other direction. And that's why I kind of used this here to have a little extra room. Because this, I'm sorry, you can't really see. Sorry. Yeah, this up here is still the tone, so that gives me this kind of like entry point where I can get in to do the scratching. I keep wanting to say kizuru because that's what we call it in Japanese. Is there a better word for it than scratching in English? Guys, let me know. And the reason why I haven't cut the guy out in the middle yet is because I'm scared that if I had cut him out, it would be while I'm cutting away I might like break off parts of the tone or lift it up or something. So it just makes it a little easier to do the cutting first. The only thing that is you have to kind of be careful not to put too much pressure on the areas that you want to cut off later, because if you put a lot of pressure down on those areas, you might get it stuck to the paper, which would result in your ink coming off. But I mean, those are all those things you kind of learn as you do it more often. You kind of get a feel for how the different elements interact with each other, and then you kind of develop your own way of working. I don't know. That seems to be okay. I don't know. I feel like the end is a little too scratchy, the upper part. So I think I want to get maybe like another layer down, going maybe more this direction. So that probably more or less does it. So you see how it kind of goes from this shading down to a white area, the white area here. And now the next part is just to cut out the parts we don't want. So let's do that. Yep, so that's the basics of using tone. Next week we will try to go into how to do cloud effects or some other different tone usages. I also might do some things with the computer. I'm finding that I use computer primarily for my own work, so it's easier for me to get videos out with computers. So I may have computer videos coming out regularly with the occasional analog drawing instructional video as well. So that's all for this week. Till next time, yoroshiku.